About 8 years ago, I went across to Uganda to do some work there with Mildmay, and it was specifically for helping people with HIV/AIDS. In fact, the lady who was running Mildmay, Ruth Sims, began to develop the idea of a hospice because obviously some of the children were dying. Many of them had been abandoned, so they had nowhere to go, and so they were being taken into this hospice and cared for there. And that was where I first saw the little girl, Rachel. And I looked into the cot and I just saw the breathing, the heavy breathing of this little girl who was not conscious and really looked like she was dying. And while I looked, I felt like the Lord spoke to my heart and said to me, you could do something about this if you wanted to.
The pastor, Bev Merle, got up in church on Sunday, and I didn't really know her very well, but I knew she'd been traveling. And she came back from Uganda and she said, you know, there are children living with HIV and there are drugs, but there's no love, there's no care for many of these kids, and they're going to die unless they get cared for. And is there anyone here who wants to do something about HIV? So I just put my hand up and said, yes, that's me.
The response was overwhelming, and a team quickly formed.
The church hasn't never taken on a project like this before, so it felt like pioneering, it felt like groundbreaking.
With limited resources, we moved out to Uganda in faith, and God provided us with the land and expertise, and we built our first homes in 2007. And then in December, we opened our doors to our first children.
The places where the children who are in Cherish Uganda have come from are very desperate places, places that are torn apart, places that lack proper shelter. And in most cases, we find they are either slums, streets, or just abandoned on the roadside and in trenches.
To create real hope, we focus on 4 aspects of care: health, love, prosperity, and education. We began by rescuing the most vulnerable and orphaned children, often right from their hospital beds, and placed them into loving families with mothers where they became sons and daughters again, affirming their belonging and value. Children began life-saving treatment, supported by our pediatric nurse and strengthened by the nutritious foods we grow on our organic farm. The transformations in children were miraculous, and we began to see hope emerge from the most tragic stories. To ensure promising futures, we began primary school, and soon the doors were opened to the most vulnerable children from our community, many of them also living with HIV. And we don't just believe our children are going to live long and healthy lives, but they are going to excel and change perceptions about HIV, becoming leaders who are influencing and changing their world. And because we won't rescue every vulnerable child living with HIV, our goal is to build meaningful partnerships with communities, to change mindsets and strengthen healthcare, education, and economic stability in communities where a high prevalence of HIV and poverty coexist.
I believe God has a plan for this story to go beyond Cherish. It's like a movement, but more in a demonstration to say, please change your attitude. Think positive about these people. It is possible. There is life.
If you're willing to take God at His word and just give it a go and see what happens, I think all of us could be partakers of miracles.